We gotta talk about these new leaks and rumors around the Oblivion remake, because the latest ones are getting kinda crazy. These recent leaks are claiming that you'll be playing a remade version of Oblivion within 3 months. Yeah, apparently this game is coming incredibly soon, with some even saying next month, and this time around multiple insiders are claiming all of this. It's not like we're just basing this off of one random guy. And stick around because we also might have a bit of an update on the Elder Scrolls 6. This Oblivion remake has been around for a while now. It originally leaked all the way back in summer of 2023, when a supposed employee of Virtuous Games, a major outsourcing studio, leaked a bunch of projects being developed by their Paris branch. One of these projects was a remake/remaster of Oblivion. It was supposedly being done using dual engines, so basically Unreal Engine 5 would overlay on top of the game's original engine to update visuals as well as certain aspects of gameplay. At the time, the leaker said they were still discussing whether it would be a full remake or remaster, but if they went more for a remake, it would likely come out in 2025. And even at the time, it wasn't like it was just a random leak. There's quite a few other things going for it that made it a bit more believable, including other insiders backing it up, and then just a few months later, we get this roadmap leak from Bethesda, which did have an Oblivion remaster on it. It's an internal roadmap, this just seemed to confirm everything. All of that went down in 2023, and 2024 was basically quiet up until the end. Rumors started to pick up again just in the past few months, and that's really where today's story begins, as a lot of the more recent rumors for this Oblivion remake are stemming from Extas1s. But I think in reality, Extas1s was more re-reporting some of the claims made by NateTheHate, otherwise known as Nate Drake. He uses both names. So you're probably seeing Extas1s' name all over. He's typically the one bringing a lot of attention to these leaks and how they're getting so much coverage, but I think a lot of the actual info that's been accurate is coming from NateTheHate. And I know all of that was a lot, but I think context here is important, as back in January, as the Oblivion rumors were swirling once again, NateTheHate said this on his Predictions podcast.
I mean, you have had a lot of the rumors about Oblivion being at the developer direct, and I will say, I don't subscribe to that mentality. I will say that at some point last year, one of the original plans or rumors that were going around was that Oblivion was going to be in the developer direct and it was going to be a shadow drop. But as the year went on, I began to hear a lot of different information around it. And I will say now that Oblivion will be coming out in 2025, and it's currently slated to release in the month of June. So it's another first half of the year release for Microsoft. And if it's not at the developer direct, I'm kind of thinking maybe they announce it in March, which would follow very close to when the game had originally released on the Xbox 360 in 2006.
So Oblivion reveal in March with a potential release in June. That honestly didn't get a ton of coverage at the time, but just this past week we did get an update on all of it. As when asked about Oblivion news on Twitter, NateTheHate says, either this month or next month. Release is likely to be sooner than the original June target, but still working to get details on an updated release date. And there you have it. If you've recently seen a YouTube video, article, or something else covering this, it's probably based off one of these two things, because that's most of the information. Thankfully, there is a bit more, and even other people backing this up, and even NateTheHate himself has pretty much stayed consistent over several months now. But these claims are huge. I suspect the Oblivion remake could be revealed a week from today on March 20th. That'll be the 19-year anniversary for Oblivion, and it really is the only major date that stands out in the next month or so. And the release being even sooner than June is also not that crazy. Last time we talked about these rumors, they reminded me of an older Todd Howard interview from 2019 about reveal to release timelines.
I like when you really see the game to when it's out is as short as possible. Yeah. As short as people will let me.
You would go shorter if you could?
Oh yeah. Well, maybe, I'm trying to think what's perfect right now. Maybe a week just to get people excited, to have those moments of I saw it, there's some trailers, percolates in your mind.
Unfortunately for Todd Howard, it seems like it might be closer to a month or two compared to a week, but that's pretty insane. We might see this game revealed in a week and then actually be playing it for ourselves within a month or two. That's got to be one of the most insane reveal to release timelines ever, particularly for something as anticipated as a Bethesda Game Studios remake. This is really the first time they'll properly be doing this. But should we even believe any of this? Is NateTheHate even reliable? Actually, yeah, this insider is one of the best currently out there. Even just in that prediction podcast that I showed to you earlier, he correctly got South of Midnight in April as well as Doom the Dark Ages in May, and did correctly leak Doom the Dark Ages last summer as being revealed at the showcase and getting a PS5 release. which, yeah, that was a pretty big deal and a pretty big surprise at the time. This guy tends to know his stuff, but thankfully this time around, we don't just have to trust NateTheHate. As separately, VGC reported on this story saying, now, according to insider NateTheHate, the Oblivion remake is set for reveal in the coming weeks, a claim VGC has corroborated with its own sources. Nate claims the game will likely release before June, while sources have told VGC it could arrive as soon as next month. That potentially suggesting an April release date for this Oblivion remake, which would simply be insane. But after covering this supposed game that I've just known about through leaks for almost 2 years now, yeah, I fully believe this. One of the most damning parts is all of these major organizations finally covering the Oblivion remake. They didn't cover some of the past stuff nearly as much. But this time around, they're doing full-on articles based off one-off tweets, which makes me think perhaps people know a little bit more than they're letting on. IGN doesn't want to post this article and then look completely silly in 2 weeks when nothing happens. But of course, the next major question is, what will this game even play like? From the original leak, it's described as using dual engines. Other games have done this in the past, and basically the way it works is Unreal Engine 5 is used as almost a top layer. You can overhaul visuals, of course, but also go in and individually select features to change up. So you can leave, let's say, movement as vanilla, so it'll use the original game's movement system, but then go and redevelop combat in Unreal Engine 5 to basically replace and overlap the old version. So it's almost like you could go piece by piece to choose to remake which aspects of the game you feel like need it, while leaving the other aspects that you don't feel like need it the same. And we very likely already have some major gameplay details about what has been remade. Just last month, one employee of Virtuous accidentally left their personal website up publicly, including details on the Oblivion remake. And this was captured and reported on by MP First. The website describes the game as being fully remade with descriptions on several of the remade gameplay systems. For the blocking system, ideas to improve it were taken from Souls-like and action games, as the original system was considered too boring and frustrating. The sneak icons were now highlighted in the improved sneak system, and the damage calculation methods were reworked. The stamina system was modified to be less frustrating for the player, making the knockdown that occurred when stamina is depleted more difficult to activate through changes in calculation methods. The HUD was changed to make it easier to understand and more aesthetically pleasing to young players. Hit reactions were also added to improve the response to damage inflicted on the player and NPCs. That's a big one. The combat system in Oblivion is pretty different compared to Skyrim, and hit reactions are a major aspect of modern games. And finally, archery was improved to make it more playable and modern in both third and first-person viewpoints. Of course, an essential change for all of those incoming Skyrim players. A lot of that sounds good. It's hard to really break it down without gameplay, but Oblivion is a fairly old game, so it makes sense that a lot of these systems were reworked, even if you, as a fan of Oblivion, are upset about that. But I think the reality is, a lot of Oblivion's gameplay needed certain modernizations to just make it appealing to a mass market. So I personally suspect the game will look gorgeous and probably play pretty well, but it does raise questions around modability. Right now, Bethesda has this fairly large push into paid mods, and it's been going on over the past year or so. At least to me, on paper, Remake seemed like a fantastic opportunity to sell more mods. Not saying I necessarily want them to do this, but if they're just trying to make money, yeah, you could remake Oblivion and all of a sudden that remake becomes significantly more profitable if you have a bunch of people dropping $5, $10, $20 on paid mods. So I have to imagine the money will drive them towards modability for this game. It needs to be moddable in order to make paid mods. But honestly, the moddability will be a big unknown. It's not really clear how moddable or not this game will be, but I do have to mention here that at the very least Skyblivion, which is a proper fan-made remake of Oblivion in Skyrim's engine, with everything being manually remade, is coming in 2025, and this will have typical modability. Even some recent mod authors mentioned that they're taking a break from Skyrim modding until Skyblivion drops, so even if modability isn't the best with the Oblivion remake, at least the official one, Skyblivion will definitely give us something. But yeah, a big Oblivion remake is coming, and it sounds like it's not even that far away. But like I mentioned before, that might not be all, as one of the other interesting leaks to pop up recently is from Jez Corden, and may give us clues around the Elder Scrolls 6. This one's pretty simple. In the past, we heard from Microsoft lawyers that the Elder Scrolls 6 was targeting a 2026 release date. And just this past week, we got new reporting from Jez Corden that the next-gen Xbox is slated for 2027. Immediately, tons of members of the Elder Scrolls community assumed that the Elder Scrolls 6 would then also drop in 2027, because it would make a ton of sense for it to be a launch title for next-gen consoles. I mean, right now, The Elder Scrolls is probably one of the biggest IPs that Microsoft owns. It being a launch title to kind of sell that new Xbox and get people on the new hardware would make a lot of sense, particularly if The Elder Scrolls 6 is a grand next-gen experience. So it's not really a hard leak around The Elder Scrolls 6 per se, but Jez Gordon has been very accurate with a lot of his reporting. If he thinks the next-gen consoles are in 2027, I would say it's very likely The Elder Scrolls 6 is also in 2027. You can't imagine Bethesda wants to get that game out a year before the new consoles. And if you are interested in more, get subscribed. I actually have a few Skyrim videos on the way. Some pretty insane things are going on with Skyrim mods and even some of their upcoming mods.